right, baby. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. It is Sunday following the Alabama Vanderbilt game. Crimson Tide getting that first win in SEC play, improving to 4-0 on the year. You're rocking and rolling right now on the BAMA Elite Podcast Touchdown Alabama Magazine. Here we got the three baddest men in the building. We got Justin Smith to the left corner of me, scouting and recruiting analyst for TDA. We got the man Patrick P. Money down to the right corner of, well, this way, the right corner of me for Touchdown Alabama as well. I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith. And before we get into the conversation, got to remind you guys, if you're not checking out the BAMA Elite Podcast, we encourage you to check us out, absolutely. But when you can't get to us, you got to check out the Big Game of College Football Podcast Network and audio stream for the best college football coverage around the South. So if you can't get to us here, the Bama Elite, you check out the Big Game College Football Podcast Network and audio stream to get you that coverage. But fellas, starting off with you, Pat. I mean, how you feeling? It's Sunday, first SEC game in the books here for Bama.
Yeah, the season's finally getting underway now for Alabama. I know had scare week 2 against Texas, but there's a lot of tough games to come on this SEC schedule this year.
Justin, how we feeling over there on your end?
I'm feeling good. I'm really excited about this upcoming season. For Alabama, I think things are starting to get more interesting as the weeks go on. Just looking at the upcoming opponents for Alabama, it looks as if there are going to be some real tough tests moving forward for the Crimson Tide. So I'm excited to see them run through that SEC gauntlet.
Got some real tough tests coming in down the road, but we're going to talk about this matchup against Vandy at home over the weekend. Bryant-Denny in Tuscaloosa, Crimson Tide a 55-3 win, and Coach Saban said, "Hey, we look like a team that established a standard. We put together some elements to establish the toughness, the physicality, the competitive mindset that make up Alabama football." The Tide did sustain some injuries. Cameron Latu had a bit of a stinger there, had to be helped off the field. He did return to action. He's okay. Byron Young had the ankle sprain there. He left the game in crutches. I think it's a high ankle sprain. I'm going to go to you about that, Pat, just a moment. I know Jordan Battle, I was seeing where it was a hamstring, but I don't think that was anything too serious there either. But just getting with the injury front there, I mean, Pat, what did Nick Saban say verbatim about the guys that did go down with some bumps and bruises there?
He really only discussed the injury to Byron Young, and it was kept very brief because it was right after the game. He said he had a high ankle sprain. We will probably know more about his situation on Monday, but it did not look encouraging when he was walking off the field. It wasn't putting any pressure on that leg.
Did not, and I saw that also. And to me, of course, it's always scary when they bring the cart out there and they got to get you off the field, or when the training staff, you're leaning heavily on Jeff Allen and the training staff to get you off the field. So hopefully it's not anything too severe with Young, because he was one of the guys that Jim Nagy in the Reese's Senior Bowl was looking at, for Senior Bowl watch, a potential, high round draft stock. So definitely our thoughts to Byron Young that he will be okay. But as we start this thing off here, offensively, I mean, Justin, how about Bryce Young and the wide receivers? They got some things cooking there against Vandy. The main guy, Ja'Cory Brooks, 6 catches, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. His first career 100-yard game, the young man from South Florida, Alabama's first 100-yard receiver of the season. Ran his routes crisp, broke them off well, caught the football, worked back to Bryce Young, stacked on top of DB, showed the speed. Coach Saban loves this young man's competitiveness. And to me, Justin, it feels like he established himself as, I can be a starter. I can be a primary guy. I know in the spring, he didn't participate much due to an injury. And Alabama talked about, we got Jermaine Burton in here and Tyler Harrell in here. And, the freshmen that were recruited with Isaiah Bond and Kobe Prentice and Isaiah Bond and Kendrick Law and Shaz Preston. But last night, Ja'Cory Brooks said, "Hey, I'm here too." And he reestablished himself as kind of, a force in that room, Justin.
Yeah, I really like what I've seen out of Ja'Cory Brooks. I think he showed flashes that he could be the primary wide receiver for Alabama in the future later in the season. But I think one of the things that really came to the forefront was Bryce Young's confidence in Brooks because he wasn't completely open on all of those passes. So it just shows the confidence that Young has in Brooks, which goes back to the time last season when he had to come into the game in the Iron Bowl. And I think he has gained a lot of confidence from Bryce Young. So he's one of those guys that can play in the air, can compete for those 50 balls. So, let me throw the football downfield to him because I know he can possibly go up and get it. Let me put the football where only he can go up and get it, and I can trust that he can make a play. So I really think, in my opinion, just based on what we've seen so far in terms of those wide receivers, you may have the most confidence and chemistry with Ja'Cory Brooks. After all, I know chemistry may be a little better with Trey Sanders, but I think he has a little bit more confidence in Brooks, if I had to say so myself, in my opinion, just based on what I've seen. But I really like what I've seen from those wide receivers. I think Vanderbilt did come out with that similar scheme that everybody has played Alabama with so far this season in terms of being in zone coverage. I think more of a cover two look, two safeties over the top look, and those wide receivers seem to know how to sit in the zone a little bit better because they were doing some of the things that you need to do when you're playing against a team that is consistently running zone coverage. They were crossing in front of the defensive backs, making sure to cross defensive backs' face, which is something you should never do as a defensive back. Also, just sitting down in zone, being patient. I think that really showed in terms of those wide receivers. So I think we saw a lot of growth, of course, as well as Vanderbilt. But I think some of those things we can turn towards growth in terms of working through those zones.
Yeah, Ja'Cory Brooks was the guy who was who had the big game in the receiving room. But I think Bryce Young just in general was pushing the ball down the field much better, and I think that does have something to do with the chemistry that he's built with the receivers to this point. I know they're about 4 games in now, so it's been a work in progress to get these guys going, and I think like Justin said, the receivers just kind of took what the defense gave them. They made plays when they had the opportunity to.
They did, and I mean, Jermaine Burton had 4 catches for 94 yards. He played well. Trayshawn Holden caught a touchdown. Like you mentioned, Justin, the patience. Kobe Prentice. You go back to the Texas game, didn't quite sit in the zone the way he should have. Was an incomplete pass. He learned from that, got better against Vanderbilt, sat in the zone, made plays, caught the football. He got turned up a bit out there, on the field. Bryce finished with 385 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. So it was good to see the quarterbacks and receivers get things going before getting to Arkansas. But also, guys, I mean, the run game, I thought the offensive line put together another good performance. The running backs had over 200 yards rushing again, 3 touchdowns, average over 6 yards a carry. And Jace McClellan ran on a mission. I mean, 11 carries for him, 78 yards, a touchdown, including one where he just knocked a couple of guys over, stiff-armed a guy, got in the end zone, showing the strength and the power that he talked about in the offseason that he possesses. I know Jahmyr Gibbs brings the speed and those moves when he's out there in space, but Jace talked about it. Yeah, Gibbs is the speed, but I'm the power. And he showed that power over the weekend. I mean, Pat, how impressed were you to watch Jace kind of run with that mean toughness on a mission there?
I mean, very, because I think that that kind of performance is indicative of what the kind of potential that this running game has. I mean, I think I'd have to double check, but I think Jace McClellan leads the country in yards per attempt. And with the amount of talent that they have up front and in the backfield, I mean, they're just on the cusp of trying to unlock that. But the offensive line just needs to keep building on on these past performances. I know they protected Bryce Young pretty well. I know it got a little dicey there around the third quarter. They let in a couple pressures, but Bryce was able to escape. But look, they're getting there. A couple weeks ago, it didn't look great. Didn't always look great, and now they're starting to build on a couple of these performances.
I'm similar to what you said, Pat. I think Jace McClellan is definitely a physical runner, especially when he gets into that second level. I think he can pick up some yards after contact, and that was one of the reasons earlier in the season I brought up, and I think we put out stories about it, that Alabama could have one of the best running back duos in college football, but it had to come to fruition. Of course, it is not there yet, but Jahmyr Gibbs, of course, might as well be a wide receiver for Alabama, just how dynamic he is as a wide receiver out of the backfield for the Crimson Tide so far this season. But I think him and McClellan complement each other really well, so I think they should be a good duo for the Crimson Tide moving forward. I see them on the field a lot on the same drives and at the same time on plays. So it looks as if Alabama is going to continue to incorporate that 2 running back look. I'm not sure how deep Alabama will go in terms of the backfield in the future. If they do decide to introduce another guy in, I think it'll most likely be Roydell Williams. But we will see if he's able to figure out a way to get onto the field a little bit earlier. But right now, it looks like a 2-headed monster that is developing in Tuscaloosa in terms of Gibbs and McClellan.
Yeah, I thought it was also. Oh, so go ahead. So I thought it was kind of interesting too. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs had a recorded carry until about the second or third quarter of the game. It was really only Jace McClellan or Roydell Williams who were getting carries out of the backfield. Gibbs was on the field, but it was primarily in passing situations. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, an interesting way to utilize him, as he was probably led the team in touches the past few weeks and from of all the running backs.
That was intriguing, Pat. But to me, when Roydell Williams is out there, I mean, he puts in some good series, but I continue to harp on Jamarian Miller. I mean, when he gets out there is something electric about that young man. When he gets out, whether he's lowering his shoulder, whether he's running somebody over, and then he shows the speed to take one to the house. I mean, Justin, I remember you talking about he's an old school running back. He's an old school back, kind of that pinball type of back, but at the same time, if you don't watch him, he's got the speed to go the distance. And, I remember Coach Saban mentioning that, the young man brings something to that room. And that's the reason why he's ahead of Emmanuel Henderson on the depth chart there at running back. So just very impressed by, Miller continuing to get worked in there and score. And he had 2 touchdowns yesterday, had like 63 yards rushing. He finished second behind Jace McClellan in that category. Just really intrigued and impressed by what Jamarian Miller's been able to do.
Yeah, Miller has definitely been, I guess, a bit of a surprise because he was definitely the least talked about running back heading into the season, because we knew Alabama had to figure out some things in that running back room, because you knew you had Jahmyr Gibbs, you knew what you had in Jace McClellan. Roydell Williams has shown some things in the past, and Trey Sanders has as well. But Jamarian Miller was definitely not talked about a lot heading into the season. But he is an old school back, kind of like a back that those backs Alabama used to have, like those Josh Jacobs, Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson type of guys who can basically bleed out a game for you. Hey, we're going to ride these guys back in the second half of this game. Just give them the ball. They're going to consistently pick up 4 to 5 yards each game because they're going to fight for yards. So Miller does fit that mold. It'd be interesting to see if he can possibly rise up the depth chart, get on the field a little bit earlier. But like we said earlier in this show, Alabama's running back room is filled with depth guys who can make some plays.
Yeah, it's probably the deepest position on the team. And yeah, I mean, if Jamarian Miller keeps playing like this, he might get some touches early on, but it's gonna be hard because this room is really, really loaded. Just like years past, just have so many guys that they can use.
Got one football and got a bunch of mouths to feed there at running back. But as we flip this now to, the defensive side of the football, as Delvin Molden writes in, Alabama finally looked like Bama. They stacked together a performance against Vandy where Saban said, hey, we play to the standard. More guys want to play to it. More guys want to act like it. So now it's about piling on more of those types of games. It just looked like over the weekend, Saban's been talking about those hateful competitors. Maybe that was a game where Bama started to find a little bit more of those guys. But Pat, flipping this here to the defense, and this was a group that, Henry To'o played well. And then, Will Anderson everywhere, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks everywhere. Chris Braswell got involved. Jalen Moody got involved. Everybody got involved. Vanderbilt crossed midfield twice in that game. Once for a field goal, the other one it had to punt. I'm not saying that it was shades of the 2011 defense. I would not say that at all. But, a good performance by Bama defense in terms of you only gave up 128 yards offensively. Vanderbilt converted 1 third down on 13 attempts. They averaged 2.8 yards per play. And you just really shut down an offense that had a dual threat quarterback or a mobile quarterback that can move. Really good job of the Alabama defense all the way around, especially the front that got a lot of push.
Yeah, absolutely. The defense is doing exactly what it needs to do. And I know it's still Vanderbilt. They're going to get their true tests when they face a few more dynamic offenses down the stretch in the next coming 3 to 4 weeks here. But man, that defensive front's not giving up an inch. And I know they took a hit with Byron Young going down, but they have players like Jaheim Otis who have been able to step up just young in their careers. They still have DJ Dale, they still have Justin Boygby, and I'll tell you what, Henry To'oTo'o, I don't know, he's playing with an edge this season. That guy's all over the place. He's playing phenomenal football for them up front.
I guess Henry T is hearing the disrespect, and he's saying, you know what, I'm gonna shut you guys up. So Henry, we hear you.
It was always unwarranted, and now he's showing up, man.
Yeah, Henry To'oTo'o, I think me and you, Pat, of course, picked him to be our player of the game this last week heading into Vanderbilt. Yeah, he definitely impressed in terms of taking charge of Alabama's defense. And that defensive front really was the highlight of that last game. Justin Boygby made some plays. I think he's consistently been able to develop a push inside the interior of Alabama's defensive line. Jaheim Otis continues to flash. Hope he can continue to grow and continue to be consistent for the Crimson Tide. But I think Vanderbilt definitely broke the one rule you can't do against Alabama. You never let Will Anderson go one-on-one with your tackle. We can't let that happen. If I'm the offensive coordinator, we're never going to let it happen. No play, we're going to allow him to develop pass rush. They did it one time, and I think everybody in America who was watching that game knew Will Anderson was about to get that sack. But yeah, you don't do that against Will Anderson, the most dominant player in college football. We have Alabama's defensive front definitely showing a lot of new things. I don't know if you guys were able to pick up the trend, but they talked about it on the game broadcast. But when Will Anderson, Chris Broswell, and Dallas Turner are in the game together, Alabama calls that the cheetah package, and they ran it a couple of times last game, and it was really dynamic because those guys can really get after the quarterback really well. We heard them talk about that heading into the season, that there's a package where all three of them are on the field together, and that was really exciting to see all three of those guys go after the quarterback at one time. So Alabama's defensive front is definitely showing some promise. I think the back end, I don't think it has. Texas gave it a test. I don't think it has been tested outside of Texas. So coming up, we will see what they have in the tank. I know they've had an opportunity to show some growth over the last 2 weeks with Louisiana Monroe. We're in Vanderbilt, but this upcoming season, you have some quarterbacks that you're going to face who like to throw the football all around the field. So we'll see what happens on the defense side of football for the Crimson Tide as they continue to show promise.
Well, Justin, just stick with that right there, because we actually have a thought here from one of the guys in the chat. Name is Sam, and Sam is talking about the cornerbacks for Alabama and how they can prepare themselves for those back shoulder throws, more those 9-yard routes, because Vanderbilt got some of those, ULM got some of those. So how do you prepare yourself to kind of defend that? Because KJ Jefferson's going to go at some of those. Teams down the stretch are going to go at some of those. You mentioned Tennessee. Hendon Hooker is going to try some of those. So how does Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold prepare themselves to defend that better?
Of course, they're going to have an opportunity to go up against Bryce Young and Alabama's wide receivers throughout the week. Of course, they're going to be tested in terms of getting reps, which is always the most important thing in terms of defending that. But you have to stick to your technique, be confident in your technique. Of course, Travars Robinson and Nick Saban is very involved, especially at the cornerback position. So you have to be confident. I think confidence is so important as a cornerback, because so many times we see our cornerbacks have good coverage, but they lack to finish. Whether they get nervous, think that they're not in the best position, get a pass interference called on them, or they just miss on the football but not turning their heads around. So have to have great technique, stick to that technique, continue to get great reps throughout the week. I think Bryce Young, Alabama's wide receivers, will give them a good look. But yeah, they have to be ready for this weekend. Nothing like doing it. So I think the technique is going to be very important. I think we all know they have the talent, but you have to get it done.
Yeah, I think the back shoulder is probably also one of the harder passes to defend as a defensive back. And when you throw it, if it's thrown close enough, then it's really, really difficult to stop. But it's also not necessarily a very high percentage throw to complete on a consistent basis. At least in my, if you want to just run fades to the sideline all game, I kind of be my guess, because that's almost a 50-50 ball every time. So they're definitely got to get better at it, but I don't necessarily know if it's going to be the end of the world. Like Nick Saban said during, I believe, his radio show, look, every defensive back that has ever lived has gotten beat on a player. So They just got to hold it down the best they can, not get beat consistently.
Well, guys, before we got on, we had a conversation about Deontay Lawson, and now the redshirt freshman linebacker has made his way to a question in the chat coming from Sam about Lawson. Sam says he reminds him of a C.J. Mosley and needs more opportunities. And I can see that. I see that in Lawson. I mean, where's number 32? C.J. Mosley. Comes from the Mobile area, just like C.J. Mosley did. And when you watch Lawson play, he has flashed a lot of potential. The body type is there to be a middle linebacker. Right now, he's playing weak side, kind of getting his feet wet, just like CJ did. CJ Mosley started off as a weak side linebacker, but I mean, when you watch him play, Justin, Coach Saban's talked about it. Lawson, very instinctive, good player, talented player. He now understands the system and what he has to do and what he's supposed to do. And playing within the system, he had with 5 total tackles in this game. So his number was called a lot on the field. What has impressed you so far about Lawson, Justin? And what do you think has caused him to get into these games so quickly than we probably would have thought he would get in there?
Yeah, I think instincts are very important. I remember watching him in high school. I think he's one of the more natural linebackers I've seen since I'm covering recruiting. He's one of those guys, soon as you see him line up, he's a linebacker. He moves like a linebacker, takes great angles to the backfield like a linebacker. And I think that was always natural to him. He's always played with great linebacker instincts at Mobile Christian School. He can make a big hit, but he's not always looking for the big hit. He's a guy who's making nice, effective tackles. But like we've seen, he's not afraid to stick his head in there, not afraid to come downhill to make some hits behind the line of scrimmage. So I think his instincts are very important. But as he's continued to learn, Alabama's defense, I think they are continuing to gain more confidence in him. Going back to, I think, the spring game when he first came in, I think some guys were banged up inside Alabama's linebacker room. He was able to start on Alabama's defense in that spring game. And I think that just shows the instincts that he plays with, because we all know when you're playing football, you're not thinking out there. When you are thinking, you're probably going to do pretty bad. So it's basically relying on what you have learned and playing all off of instincts in a lot of different situations. You do most of your thinking during the pre-snap. So I think that it's very important. I think that is one of the reasons why Deontay Lawson has made his way onto the field and will consistently be on the field. I just think it is interesting that he is getting rotated out with Jalen Moody. Like we said at the beginning of the show, in my opinion, it could be that they want to have some proven depth there. Like you said, Stephen, the future is bright. We know what these guys could do in terms of their potential, but let's get them on the field so we know that we have some proven depth behind Moody and To'oTo'o. And also Moody and To'oTo'o most likely move on at the end of this season. So it'll be good to have a guy like Lawson with some experience coming back.
Yeah, I think Nick Saban's kind of had enough of the he doesn't want another year like Shane Lee and Christian Harris, who were pretty much just thrown in there without any experience. So I think it's good to develop Deontay Lawson a little bit. I don't know if I'm ready to say that he can be compared to the best middle linebacker in the Nick Saban era, but look, he's a really talented player, and just the more experience he gets, he's more comfortability he gets. I think he's going to learn a lot, playing alongside someone like Henry To'oTo'o or just playing with Jalen Moody as well. So he's getting a lot of good experience here early in the year.
All right, guys. Well, Delvin Molden writes back in. We appreciate all of you guys in the YouTube chat line checking us out, the BAMA Elite Podcast, every Thursday and Sunday right here on YouTube. Touchdown Alabama Magazine with Justin Smith, lead scouting and recruiting analyst for TDA, Patrick P. Money Dowd, breaking news reporter for TDA. I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith. But Molden writes back in, what's going on with Trey Sanders? He looks powerful and shifty when he's on the field. I mean, Trey got carries against Vanderbilt. He's been worked in every game this season as the fourth back. And when he's gotten in there, he's made good opportunities. I mean, he had a touchdown last week, not last week, but the week before against UL Monroe. It's just, I guess the thing with Trey is getting all of that confidence back from the unfortunate situations, just the unfortunate injuries. And when you get injured once, it shakes your confidence. You have to find a way to bounce back, work your way back. And then when you get back and you finally feel like you're back, to get hurt again, it's like, well, man, now what? I mean, I just shook this off and I get hurt again. And I got to work my way all the way back on top of there's new recruits coming in at your position. You got the transfer portal, so you're probably going to have a running back trying to come in to compete with you for a job, and it's hard. I mean, it's tough. And kudos to Trey for sticking around and being there, and being at the program. It's just he to me, Pat, he's doing all he can.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's necessarily a confidence thing. It may just be the fact of the matter that Alabama has just so many guys there. You know, they like we brought up, they brought in Jahmyr Gibbs out of the transfer portal. You already have talented guys like Roydell Williams, Jace McClellan, who stepped up a year ago, who got hurt, came back, and still performed well. So there's just a lot of mouths to feed in that backfield.
Yeah, I think it is a combination, like Steven said, the injuries, but I do feel it's more so that running back depth that Alabama has. That is the downside of going to a school like Alabama. I know a lot of fans, especially on the recruiting side, when a guy doesn't commit to Alabama, why didn't you commit to Alabama? We won so many championships. You have Nick Saban. But if I'm a recruiter, I always say I need a clear route of playing time. I don't need to play my first year, but I need to see a route where I can play. And I think that is something that a lot of recruits consider, especially when taking a look at top Power 5 programs. So I think Trey Sanders has been on the wrong side of that, and I think the injuries have put him in a unfortunate position in terms of that depth. Like him, like Delvin said, whenever I see him in practice, I always forget how big he is. I was like, he has really nice eyes in terms of a running back. But I think, unfortunately, those injuries and Alabama continue to recruit the running back position very, very well has put Trey Sanders in an unfortunate position on the depth chart, but it has been remarkable just watching him continue to fight through those injuries, wait for his opportunities. And when he get his opportunities to play, he does not pout. He goes out on the field no matter what time it is in the game and tries to produce as best as he can.
Well, folks, guys, before we get into or continuing with this conversation, we got our guys at Prize Picks and our own Patrick Dow. Tell us what's going on with the good people of Prize Picks.
Yeah, Prize Picks, our new daily fantasy app. And so with Prize Picks, all first-time users that deposit and use our promo code will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So if you deposit $100 into Prize Picks will give you back $100. Prize Picks is the best way to have action on the game in states like California, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So how does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's and women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Prize Picks entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Download Prize Picks today and play daily fantasy sports with us. Make sure to use the promo code BAMA100. Again, that's BAMA100 when you sign up. And we give our Prize Picks weekly projections every week. We typically on Thursday, right ahead of Alabama's next matchup. So just tune in later this week. We'll have our own projections then.
Yeah. Prize Picks is definitely a great app. Like I always say, really fun app. I think one of the more interesting projections that are consistently up there, we talk about it on our Thursday show a lot, is Bryce Young's rushing yards. He went for 6 last game, so it's best to make a projection that's less than that. I think it was 15 yards. I think that was Prize Picks projection. I think that's going to consistently be one because I think there's a really fun projection, especially with the way Bryce Young handles things in terms of running the football. The Arkansas game could be a tough one, so we may see. I think it is probably best to project a more rushing yard game for Bryce when it's expected to be a little bit of a tougher game. If you go into a team that's not going to test Alabama, I think Bryce Young is going to try his best to hold on to the football and just show off that strong arm, that accuracy of his. But yeah, use that code PAMA100. Get that deposit match on Prize Pick.
Absolutely, folks. You heard it. Bama 100. Get that on right there. Appreciate Pat for that reading there of our guys at Prize Picks. But now we jump back into the conversation, recapping the Alabama Vanderbilt matchup. One cool thing, Pat, that you saw before kickoff, was Aaron Anderson, JoJo Earl, and Tyler Harrell all dressed out, all going through pregame drills. All three of these guys had injuries in the preseason. Tyler Harrell came up with a foot issue. JoJo Earl, a Jones foot fracture in fall camp, and Aaron Anderson, a knee issue prior to fall camp. But all three guys dressed out. And these are all speed guys that could take the top off of defense. JoJo Earl would have been, or was slotted to be, the starting punt returner before the injury. So to see all of those three guys dressed out, they didn't play, but to see all of those three guys on the field in uniform going through drills, Pat, how good is that to represent how close these three guys are to actually getting back on the field and playing?
Well, I think it should be very encouraging because if we're just basing it off this season, Cameron Latu, who injured his knee early on in fall camp, he did warm up ahead of Alabama's first game against Utah State, but didn't take the field. And similarly, against Vanderbilt, those three guys went through warm-ups fully dressed, but they didn't participate in the game. But look, and if Alabama, and it's Bryce Young is finding his rhythm with the receivers now, and now he's about to get back two or three other guys perhaps in the next week or so when they go to Arkansas. So this just, I mean, I think everything's almost meshing at the correct time for Alabama's offense, especially the passing attack. It's still in need of some speed and game-breaking players.
I think that's definitely promising news. We have three guys who could possibly play speedy wide receivers. Both of them, all three of them, have that similar playing style in terms of having a lot of speed. So of course that is positive news with them dressing out. So I think that is something that we could look forward to, keep our eyes on. I expect at least one of them to make a return in the upcoming weeks. Of course, Nick Saban has been not happy when asked about injuries as of late. But with them returning, Aaron Anderson, of course, returning back to practice. We saw practice clips of him, so he may be a little bit closer to coming back than the others. But, of course, we don't know for sure. But it looks as if those guys are coming back sooner than later. I think it is safe to say that, at least at this point.
And it's good to see that. I mean, like Pat mentioned, we saw Cameron Latu going through pregame warm-ups for Utah State and could have played in that game, but the coaching staff said, hey, we don't necessarily need you out here at this time, so you get better full on. And by the Texas game, hey, he was back. So to have three of your speed guys in, Aaron Anderson, Tyler Harrell, and JoJo Earl all dressed out, maybe this shows, okay, Arkansas, they could be back. Maybe this shows the next game they could be back. But to see all three of those guys on the field together, it does send out some type of encouragement that at some point in the season, all three are going to be back out there and be back on the field catching passes from Bryce Young, which is what we want to see anyway. But before we get back to the defense here, guys, special teams, yes, Alabama had a couple of fumbles there. Kool-Aid McKinstry tried to run it back, got caught from behind, a fumble there, lost that one. Brian Branch mistimed the bounce there. That was a muff there. Thankfully, Malachi Moore jumped on that one. But aside from those two, I thought special teams tacked on another consistent performance. We're seeing Kool-Aid McKinstry, natural in space as a returner. We're seeing James Barnup getting better and better, growing in confidence as a punter, dropping another, 2 or 3 punts inside the 20. He's averaging 40-plus yards per punt now, which was an issue for him last season. He's improved that. Of course, Will Reichert is Will Reichert. We expect him to just drill it, but we're seeing that the special teams, Justin, is starting to show, hey, we're a weapon out here just like the offense and defense are.
Yeah, Alabama special teams is continuing to show a lot of promise as well. Specifically, Will Reichert. I think he's continuing to raise his draft stock. I think Reichert wants to be a kicker that is going to be drafted this upcoming draft. So I think that's something that.
Now, Justin, are you saying first round kicker? Huh?
No, I'm definitely not going that far. But I think he is a kicker in college football who is making some impacts in terms of possibly being drafted. Definitely going to the NFL if he keeps up things at this pace. So I think that is a storyline we definitely have to keep our eyes on. Kool-Aid McKinstry has been exciting returning punts. I think that goes back to just his experience doing it at Penn Valley High School, just that stop and go ability. Yes, I think we saw that a couple of times. Look, he was basically going to stop running and just basically cut back across the field, showing off his speed with the football in his hands. He was a basically All-American wide receiver throughout his high school career. So I think that just goes along with that ability. And of course, it is always great to have a great punter like James Burnap as he continues to gain more and more experience. Was a starter last year, of course, but I think he has consistently gotten better as well. So special teams may not get talked about, but Alabama has a solid special teams group this year.
Yeah, it's a strange time we live in where Alabama's kicking game is actually really good. But the punt, I think Kool-Aid has done really well when he's gotten the ball, when he has the ball in his hands on punt return. He really reads the return well. But gotta get a little more consistent with handling the ball. I know he had a muff punt. I think Brian Branch had the other one, and then the Kool-Aid also fumbled later on. So, ball security is probably the biggest thing Nick Saban harps on in terms of the punt return. It's not necessarily can you bring it back and flip the field. It's who can handle it the best.
Absolutely. So as we look into now, as we got a thought coming in from Gelato here, appreciate Gelato writing this in. The question is, what do we think about the matchup here with Arkansas? And I know we're going to talk about this more in depth on Thursday, but we could just kind of get a little bit on the surface of starting off with you, Justin. I mean, in this match against Arkansas, you're going up against a dual threat quarterback in KJ Jefferson. Sam Pittman has done a great job as a head coach. You've got Trey Sanders over there as well, former Alabama outside linebacker. I mean, what do you think this game on the surface, Justin, shows you about Alabama taking this trip to Fayetteville?
I think Arkansas is a tough team. I think this is going to be a tough test for Alabama on paper heading into this game, because I don't think we expected that Texas game to be that close. But I think this is the biggest test Alabama has had to this point in the season. I think we can easily say that. Just taking a look at Arkansas's roster, specifically KJ Jefferson, big physical running back, and he's not sliding. He's not going to slide. I think he might try to run you over all game, but he's a tough quarterback, always going to take advantage of any running lane. You may compare him to Jalen Hurts in terms of that body frame and just the ability to run the football as a quarterback. Although he's still growing as a passer, but he has had a lot of success passing the football for the Razorbacks. And Trey Sanders, the former Alabama outside linebacker, is making some noise in Fayetteville in terms of going after the quarterback. Like Nick Saban said earlier in the season, if he stayed at Alabama, he most likely would be a starter. And I don't think either of us would argue against that, just based on what he has seen in his particular skill set. So I think Arkansas has some guys. They have some talented guys who Alabama has to keep in check, specifically KJ Jefferson. Just taking a look at how Alabama has defended dual threat quarterbacks in the past. He's definitely a talented, gifted runner who runs a lot, whether it is a quarterback run or he just has to escape the pocket. And I think that is a position to take a look. Just taking a look at the Texas A&M game. Unfortunately, they did not. Oh, there was just so much bad luck with that field goal. But I don't think you want Arkansas to have the ball last in a close game, because Jefferson is going to maybe run the game out. That is what should have happened against Texas A&M. So I think those are some of the things I am looking forward to watching.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the battle in the trenches, because Arkansas, Sam Pittman, they really embodied his mentality. They're a really physical, tough team up front, and Alabama's run defense has been stellar so far this year. So it's just going to be interesting to see who wins up front in the line of scrimmage. And it's also Trey Sanders has been fantastic this year, and it's hard to argue, like Justin said, that he wouldn't start if he had stayed at Alabama, and it's almost looking like a costly loss now with how well he's rushing the passer this year.
Well, guys, we got a thought here coming in from Marcus Stanley, and he's asking about Jordan Battle, one of the guys that got nicked up there against Vanderbilt. I know you mentioned, Pat, Coach Saban didn't go into the injury details. I was looking around social media, and from the people that were at the press conference, I kept seeing him, hamstring. So I'm thinking that's what it is. I mean, Saban didn't go into anything about Battle. Was it deep? Was it a serious situation there? Like we talked about, we will hear more about that Monday, because you better believe somebody in that room is going to ask, how is Byron Young? How is Jordan Battle? How is Cameron Latu? So somebody's going to ask about some type of an update there, and probably by that time, Saban would give one. But I know Cameron Latu, he came back and played. I think Jordan Battle came back and played. So Those two, I don't think was a big issue. I just know Byron Young did walk off. He did have the crutches there. So he was the only kind of serious one of the three.
Yeah, Byron Young's the only one we know for sure. Anything else, we'll find out tomorrow.
Well, absolutely on that. Well, I guess for me, what I'm looking forward to seeing here in this game against Arkansas is how will this performance against Vanderbilt travel, right? How will this travel on the road to Fayetteville? That is a tough place to play. I've been at Donald W. Razorback Stadium quite a couple of times, and when that place is lit, they are lit. It is louder. You can hear the foundation shake. It is crazy when they call on the Hogs. The whole thing that they do, it's mad. It's unreal. So you're walking into that environment, and you're taking this game against Vandy, where you showed some signs of Bama football. Can you take that on the road against a very tough team, against a very physical team, and just take their crowd completely out of the mix right there? I think that's what I want to see. Can this performance against Vanderbilt travel on the road as you start this huge gauntlet away from Bryant-Denny?
Yeah, I was gonna just cut in real quick, Steven, and we brought the comment on the channel. I think that is going to be Marcus Stanley says time of possession, who can stay on the field. Third down is going to be teletape. I think that is a very good development on Marcus. I think that is a very, very important point to make just looking at this game, because I think Arkansas is a team with KJ Jefferson who's able to run, who if I was the Razorbacks offensive coordinator, that may be a game plan that I may lean on. Hey, let's hold on to the football as much as we can, because Alabama has an explosive offense, and their offense could get the game out of hand. If we control the game and do what we do, just control the pace of the game with our offense, I think that could be, like Marcus said, the tail of the tape. I think that is an interesting point to make at this point in time.
Yeah, it's almost like the game from today between the Bills and the Dolphins. Even though the Bills ended up losing the game, they were really trying to sit on the ball all afternoon. They dominated time possession, just trying to keep Tua and the offense off the field. And I know it didn't quite work out for them, but it helped them keep the game close, even when the back end of their defense was banged up today.
Good point there from Justin and Pat. Pat bringing up the matchup there between two Dolphins and the Bills there. Marcus Stanley also mentioned third down. And Bama's defense has gotten better getting off the field on third down. But I think the big thing here also, going back to the Texas game, the crowd, a lot of penalties took place, 15 of those. Can Alabama, even in the crowd, on third down, not have those penalties where you give Arkansas new life and you keep drives alive? So if it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and long, and you get that third down stop and you remaining disciplined so that you can get off the field, that's a big deal.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting to see, because they've had a couple stretches of home games here and they look better, but it's time to find out what that carryover is.
Yeah, we all know SEC play is go back to all those great SEC games in the past. Some of those games are determined by a couple of moments. So I think that is going to be really interesting over the next couple of weeks for Alabama. I think we're going to see some pretty important moments if these games are played out the way we are expecting them to be played out. So I know you guys, and I am excited to just see some real SEC football over the next couple of weeks for the Crimson Tide in terms of the people that they are going up against.
Well, the gauntlet, baby, is on, folks. Starting next week on October 1st, you got Bama, you got Arkansas in Fayetteville, Donald W. Reynolds, Razorback Stadium up there. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I think CBS will have that game. I believe it's a 2:30 Central Time kickoff right there. As always, people, if you can't catch the BAMA Elite Podcast, Touchdown Alabama Magazine right here on YouTube, we encourage you to check out the Big Game College Football Podcast Network and audio stream for the best coverage of college football in the South. So if you can't get to us, the Bama Elite, definitely check out the Big Game College Football Podcast Network and audio stream for that coverage. But fellas, it was a good game against Vanderbilt. There were some things that were cleaned up. There were some things that made us happy. There were some things that we enjoyed, but as we've all mentioned, now You got to take this on the road and show you can do this on the road. So, as a final thought here, Pat, can you see this team, or do you see this team being able to take what we thought maybe Bama's found that identity a little bit? Do you see them taking that on the road and keeping up with that?
I mean, yeah, they certainly have the talent to improve and help carry over these past performances, but we're just going to see because they really don't this crop of Alabama players really doesn't function well in hostile environments. It struggled all last year, and the one opportunity they had this year, they struggled again. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they can deal with the crowd noise.
Yeah, and I think the defense, I know a lot of people feel that Alabama has found its identity. If I had to say a side of the football where I feel they have, most likely will be defense, because defense has consistently been good all season. So if we had to make that distinction and say where they have found their identity so far, it'd be on the defense side of football. I am going to watch how Alabama's offense travels to Vanderbilt. I think that is where the game could possibly be won. I don't think Arkansas, although they have been really successful on the offensive side of football, if Bryce Young and Alabama's offense gets rolling, I don't think Arkansas can keep up if that is the case. So I think my eyes will be on the offensive side of football. I think if we had to pick a side, Alabama has shown some consistency at and may have found their identity, it would be the defense.
Well, guys, before we sign off here, we got one final thought to get to. This is from DJ German asking about Bryce Young. He shows the concern of, guys, why doesn't Bryce use his legs more? Is it because of injuries of quarterbacks in the past? So German kind of got a concern with, Bryce doesn't take off. Bryce doesn't use the legs. I mean, he does use them. He doesn't use them as often as guys like, Jalen Hurts did and Blake Sims did and Jacob Coker when he was running over guys back in 2015, the way that he did. So, Pat, I'll go this to you first. I mean, should there be a concern that Bryce doesn't use his legs more?
No, he's 180 pounds. I don't think Alabama wants him really scrambling all that much. So I think they're okay with him keeping the play alive and looking for his guys.
180 pounds. Pat getting the measurements out here.
He's just not built like Jalen Hurts and those other guys. So yeah, maybe it is the risk of it probably is the risk of injury, but I think it's work. I think him just holding on to the ball and throwing downfield more often than not, it works out. I know he takes a couple questionable sacks here and there, but yeah. So maybe maybe he's right. Maybe he is risk of injury, risk of evading injury.
Yeah, I think the risk of injury is something Alabama staff is probably happy about. Their quarterback is not going to take too many shots. But I think that is just simply Bryce Young's game. He doesn't like to run the football down the field. He wants to use his feet to extend the play and keep his eyes downfield and look for the best exciting play. That is just who he is, and that is just his playing style. I can't explain it. That is just how he plays quarterback. You can go back and take a look at his tape in high school. It is the same thing. He literally has that basketball background. Almost looks as if he's shaking guys in basketball, trying to get past them with a crossover. He has that same type of mannerisms during his time at Mater Dei High School. He just wants to keep his eyes downfield, extend the play. He's running to pass the football, not running to make a big play with his legs.
Looking Russell Wilson-esque right there. But folks, this has been the Bama Elite Podcast on a Sunday. Touchdown Alabama Magazine recapping the 55-3 win for Bama over Vanderbilt. Getting it set up now, the SEC Gauntlet. For Justin Smith, for my man Patrick Dowd, yours truly, Stephen M. Smith, Touchdown Alabama Magazine. Folks, we will see you on Thursday as we